Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the investment of the heart and the timing of when a man or woman should give that in their relationships. There's an alarming willingness today of men and women to give their hearts prematurely in their relationships, and it leads to other kind of dangers and inappropriate activity before marriage. And of course we wonder why and how do the feelings play a role in this. So we're going to talk about that today. We're back with Father Edward Connolly. He's a pastor in the Diocese of Allentown, Pennsylvania. Welcome back, Father.
Thank you, Mr. Buono.
So, Father, today we'll talk about the heart. We talk about the giving of the heart in a relationship. We talk about the timing and when it is good. And we want to try and figure out what's going on and why people are either engaging in sexual experiences outside of marriage. Even Catholics are falling into these type of temptations, and even the process of dating and when a man or a woman, and especially a woman, really allows her heart to be invested in the relationship, because you can get your heart broken, obviously, when the relationship does not work out. So, what is the balance there we want to try and get to? And I'd like to start, I guess, by talking about the heart itself and the place of the feelings. And since love is very much an act of the will, should feelings be separated from this process, or how do they fit into things? Because obviously we have desires in these relationships, and we have to figure out the timing of when to expose them.
When we talk about the heart, we're talking about the deep inner reality of a person, his or her central core. So we're not talking simply about feelings, we're talking about one's own self. When we talk about, in Catholic devotional terminology, we talk about the Sacred Heart of Jesus. We're not talking just about feelings or about a physical organ, but we're talking about the very fundamental heart core of what Jesus is. In fact, come to think of it, the word core does mean heart, doesn't it?
Yes.
The Latin word for heart is core. Many people, I think, are dualists. A dualist is a person who thinks that matter and spirit exist in opposition to one another, and they visualize a human being or conceptualize a human being as a soul, spiritual entity inside of a body, a physical entity, and they think that the two can be separated, but the reality is they can't. I am not a soul bouncing around inside of a body, nor am I a body that encases a soul. I am an embodied spirit, as are you, we human beings. And so when we give away our bodies, we're giving away our souls. And somebody might say, oh, no, we're not. I say, well, yes, we are. You can't give away your body without giving away your soul. Or if you can, then you have stripped yourself of your humanity. Okay? I remember many years ago coming across a young man whose name, quite frankly, I forget, but I remember this one conversation I had with him, and he had a very, very flippant attitude toward women. And I remember he said that he believed that it would be best to do the sexual act of intimacy with the woman, if she was willing to, as soon after the meeting as possible, second date perhaps, maybe first date, I'm not sure what he meant. And he said, you want to get that out of the way, so that then you can start to relate to one another as persons. It's almost like it was a dog that was barking and needed a bone, throw the bone to the dog, Okay, now that you're happy, now we can relate as spiritual entities or persons to one another. That's absurd. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. But I think it's a common point of view, It's a trivialization of the body, of the human body.
Based on what you just said, it sounds like there is a total disconnect in the starting a relationship, the dating process, the whole thing before marriage, there seems to be a disconnect of the reality of becoming one flesh in marriage, and that is real. I mean, of course, those of us who are really locked into what the church teaches and believes, especially about marriage, we say, yes, you become one flesh. The scriptures are not giving something figuratively here, but it doesn't seem to be an idea present in the dating process.
No. People deny reality. People think that they can create their own reality. But a person who has had multiple sexual partners carries every one of those previous sexual partners into his or her marriage. And it's not an advantage, I'll tell you. It's not an advantage. If there has been promiscuity with other parties before the parties get married, those ghosts will come back to haunt them in their marriage. Now, is it a problem that can be solved? Yeah, it can be solved, because thank God there's forgiveness, thank God there's grace. You know, God's grace is the best reparative therapy that there is, you know. So we're not saying that if you have had illicit sex with somebody that you're doomed. No, you're not doomed, because God does forgive and God will heal if you allow him to. But best not to. And so the Catholic Church says to young people, don't have sex before marriage. You know, and in saying that, we're almost alone, because so many other religious groups have stopped, you know, saying that, and they just say, oh well, kids will be kids, you know. And so here's some condoms, take some condoms, so that we don't have to have your babies on welfare, you know. But that's a terrible thing. It's disastrous. Back in 1975, the Vatican came out with a document which is called the Declaration on Certain Questions Concerning Sexual Ethics. That document is one of many documents contained in this book, and I marked the page here.
What is that, Love and Sexuality?
The book. However, the document itself can be found separate from the whole volume. This is just a compendium of teachings on love and sexuality. But the document, in fact, I'm sure the document can even be found online. In fact, I know it can. If you were to Google Declaration on Sexual Ethics, or you'd come up with it. But anyway, it says this, among other things. Now, you have to get around Vatican language, which is rather ornate sometimes. It says, today there are many who vindicate the right to sexual union before marriage, at least in those cases where a firm intention to marry and an affection, which is already in some way conjugal in the psychology of the subjects, require this completion, which they judge to be connatural, which, okay, that's a very fancy language we're saying. There are a lot of people today who say it's okay to have sex before marriage as long as you have some sort of a commitment to one another. Or, as kids will say, as long as you really love one another, you know, as long as you really love one another. This is especially the case when the celebration of the marriage is impeded by circumstances, or when this intimate relationship seems necessary in order for love to be preserved. Now, the Vatican document is setting up the case, saying, here's what the opposition says. Then it comes out with a sentence. This opinion is contrary to Christian doctrine, which states that every genital act must be within the framework of marriage. And then it goes on to say the intentions of the persons who are engaging in premarital sex is irrelevant. That's irrelevant. You can't change reality by your intention. Okay, a lot of people are involved in that kind of magical thinking that something is what I want it to be. For example, this is a pen. Well, right now I don't need a pen because I'm hungry. I would like this to be a candy bar because I would like a candy bar right now. So this is a candy bar. It's a pen. How about that? Reality doesn't conform to my intentions.
Well, it just goes to show then that we, when it comes, I'm sure people would laugh at that with a pen, and probably most people will not try and do such a thing. But under the same logic, they will try and do that with their experiences in a relationship. I mean, there's something about a man and a woman coming together in pre-marriage. Let's just call it dating or whatever the relationship would be called. There's something about that and the effects of the emotions and feelings that go along with that trick us. There has to be something different. I mean, we're not easily tricked by that pen saying that that's a candy bar. So, what is that? Do you think that can trick us into saying this be good?
Well, the whole thing about original sin, the sin of the first parents in the garden, what did it do? It disrupted the harmony, and the harmony between what? Well, the harmony between human beings and God. And it also disrupted the harmony among human beings. But it also disrupted the harmony within the individual person. So that it's strange. The first thing that Adam says, or is recorded as saying, after he has committed the sin, when God comes into the garden and says, "Where are you?" He says, "Here I am." And then he says, "I was naked and ashamed." And God said, "Who told you that you were naked?" In other words, the idea is that prior to committing sin, there was perfect harmony between human body and human soul. Didn't even advert to the fact that you're naked. Like, well, so what? It was a total innocence. Not stupidity, harmony, the innocence of harmony. But only after sin did the human body become a source of shame. And so they covered themselves, So that's manifest today in how people, use their bodies and treat their bodies.
True. Yeah, there certainly is a loss of the sense of shame, even in just basic behaviors that could lead to any type of sexual experiences, just in the way we, dress towards each other, the way we behave and talk to each other. There seems to be a constant pushing the envelope to just see what the other might do, and maybe you have women who are saying, well, I see where he's going with this, and maybe in order to keep this relationship going, I have to give in a little bit, and they set themselves up for brokenness, really, in that respect. And maybe men are saying, I'd like to be chaste, but she's really nice looking, and maybe if she's interested, maybe I'll give in to that. So they disconnect themselves in that, and they keep. This is hardly charity and the love that leads towards marriage.
Illicit sex is like a narcotic. I say that having had a number of conversations with a lot of people over the past, at this point in my life, 41 years of being a priest, I begin to see, sometimes to my amazement, that you can, it's like trying to talk a dog off a meat wagon to get someone to give up this illicit sexual relationship. Yeah. It almost takes a Red Sea miracle, an act of God. And I say to myself, gee whiz, there's something strange going on here. This sexual, it's an addiction, it really is. Yeah. It has to be treated as an addiction with some people.
Yeah. And it is a brokenness. I mean, and people just don't know it. It's a very subtle thing that happens, and you take that into your next relationships, and you just then you start coming up with excuses why the relationship isn't working out. It could very well be just these real things that have happened that we're just not noticing. Let's take a moment now and just see what our experts have to say on this topic.
If women are feeling that this is what men want, because again, the culture is breeding that and telling them that this is what it means to be a man. But it works both ways. The women can have that reverse chivalry where they're the ones leading and maybe possibly leading them into impurity or premarital sexual, because they feel that that's what the man wants. And a lot of women will give that to a man because she wants to keep him in her life. But in reality, it takes him away.
Because women have a tremendous capacity to love, to nurture, and to look at the good side of things, which is beautiful. I mean, they have a great capacity for the gift of self. But clearly, they listen to their heart, but they also have to use their head. and more now than ever, just because of the culture. Again, coming back to it, yeah, they have to be that love. Love ultimately is a gift of self, but real love is a permanent gift of self.
Well, I think the biggest problem that women have today attracting men is that the culture and has said to men that women are easy, that you don't need marriage in order to have sex. You know, there was an old song back there, you know, love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. Well, that may have been true at one time, but it hasn't been true in a while. So that the biggest thing that I think that a woman has to overcome is the idea that she's easy. She has to let the man know, hey, I'm pretty and I'm smart and I can take care of you if you want me to. But if we go forward into this thing, it has to be the way it's supposed to be. And she will get rid of an awful lot of dead weight, because a guy that's still looking to fool around is not going to be interested in her, and she shouldn't be interested in him, because all that is a broken heart.
And so affection is not love, or infatuation is not love. And so a person always, while they may have strong, not physical, forget the physical, just attraction to the person for his smile or his way of being or his sense of humor or his piety, all great things. But you also have to put that other criteria that should be in the back or in the front of your mind. How am I going, with all that, is this person going to be a good father to my children? Is he going to be a person who can support me? Is he going to be a person who's will live according to the teachings of the church? Is he a person that is going to get along with my parents? Now, I'm not saying these are you just X or check each one, but those are things, all the things that are going to be involved in for at least the next 20 or 30 years of that putative marriage are going to be these types of things that are much more important than Prince Charming, what appears to be Prince Charming.
Unfortunately, we live in a very unvirtuous culture. I grew up in a much more virtuous United States. When I was a young priest, the vast majority of girls who were married were virgins. And if an engaged couple went beyond where they should have, they would have been very upset and gone to confession and been deeply, deeply troubled. Now, because of the promiscuous media, those values have been washed away. It is certainly true that you find very good families, very active Catholic families, Christian families, leading their children in the right direction. But many other families who basically do a good job don't even attempt to make sure that the kids lead a chaste life till they are married.
Which is one reason we call marriage a sacrament. Why marriage is a sacrament, a means of grace, an instrument of God's gracious support and strengthening in our lives. Marriage is not, just a contract. It's not just striking a deal between two people, gee, I think it'll enhance my life and it'll be mutually enhancing if we get married, wouldn't it? It'd be a good deal. Well, those considerations enter in. But before it's a contract, it's a covenant. It's a covenantal relationship, like the relationship that God enters into with the children of Israel and Christ has with his church, his body, the church.
Whether we admit it or not in this culture, having sex with someone is a natural kind of a committed language. It's a language of commitment. And so if somebody has sex before marriage or outside of marriage and doesn't have that commitment, they are in a sense diminishing in their own subjective mind the sacredness and the uniqueness of that act. And that act is a beautiful way of recommitting to the marriage covenant. Some people call it, let's celebrate our marriage covenant, which is a beautiful way of expressing it.
Always keep in mind that we live in a fallen world. We are sinful people. We sin. We fall short. That doesn't take the power of the cross away. That doesn't negate the redemption. But, you know, the Holy Father talks about shame. He talks about it as this boundary experience, something that Adam and Eve didn't experience in the beginning. They only experienced it after they sinned. And so obviously there's something negative about that shame. Now it means they have to cover themselves. They have to kind of hide a part of themselves from each other because there's a danger there of being seen as an object. But John Paul II also talks about shame in a positive way. He says it serves a good purpose. That protection is also because what we have in our persons is so amazing and beautiful and wonderful that it cannot just be used just for satisfaction or ego gratification.
So there definitely is a time and a place for giving our feelings, investing our heart, if you will. There's a brokenness element that we take into our relationships if we are giving in too easily. I mean, we have to take notice of that, of how easily we are to give in to our feelings and our emotions that come with, you know, having a good relationship before marriage. So there has to be something about the timing that we bring into the relationship and how we invest our heart and when.
Back in the 60s, I guess it was the 60s, there was a folk song that was very popular, which was based on Ecclesiastes, chapter 3. As I recall, the song went, "To every season turn, turn, turn.
Right.
There is a reason," or something like
Turn,
that.
turn, turn, the birds.
But that's based on Ecclesiastes chapter 3.
I thought that was just a song, and they just came up with those great lines.
Well, this is a great day in your life. You learn something. No, it's based on the scripture. There is an appointed time for everything and a time for every affair under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot the plant. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to be far from embraces. And it goes on. Chapter 3, verses 1 to 5 is what I just read there in Ecclesiastes. So part of wisdom is knowing the times and not just following the feelings. Fundamental human virtues are prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. And prudence is, you know, they say the navigator of the other virtues. And we have to know when to engage our feelings and when not to. Now, feelings are spontaneous, and somebody can say, well, what do you mean engage your feelings? Aren't they spontaneous? Well, yeah, they are spontaneous. But that doesn't mean that I have to act according to my feelings. Mm-hmm. All of us have had feelings that we have not acted on, you know. Otherwise, we'd all be back in the jungle, you know. Sometimes you get very angry and you feel like, you know, lashing out, punching somebody maybe, but best not to do it,
I once heard that our feelings, our emotions are handmaids of the will. So they don't have a disconnection from our decision making, but they are in fact
correct.
Handmaids.
They are servants of the will, yeah, you're right. You know, Ecclesiastes also says something in chapter 2, the very beginning of chapter 2. I said to myself, come now, let me try you with pleasure and the enjoyment of good things. But behold, this too was vanity. Vanity. Ecclesiastes does, you know, a discourse on vanity, and vanity really means emptiness, foolishness, you know, that which is apparently good but really isn't, you know. And so pleasure seeking is apparently good, but it leaves you, you know, it leaves you empty at the end.
Right, exactly. Are there any other places in the scripture that could give people insight about the concept of love and its pursuits and the sexual experience according to God's will?
Oh, yeah. You're familiar, I guess, with the Song of Songs? The Song of Songs,
Yeah.
or sometimes called the Song of Solomon, also called the Canticle of Canticles. In fact, that's very close to the book of Ecclesiastes. I have it here somewhere. The Song of Songs is beautiful. It's probably the most exotic book in the Bible.
Exotic. Why do you say exotic?
Exotic. Well, let me put it this way. It wouldn't go over too well in second grade or third grade. I'll tell you why. It starts off, let him kiss me with kisses of his mouth, more delightful is your love than wine. Second graders wouldn't relate too much to that. They would fall on the floor laughing, wouldn't they? So we save this for more mature years. But it's a poem between a man and a woman, a young husband and wife, who are passionately in love with one another. And there's a chorus in this book who are referred to as the daughters of Jerusalem. And I'm looking now at chapter 3, verse 5 of the Song of Songs. The bride, the young woman in the poem, turns to this chorus of girls who are called collectively the daughters of Jerusalem, which means what? It means young women in general, and says, I adjure you, daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and hinds of the fields, do not arouse, do not stir up love before its own time. Before its own time. To everything there is a time, okay? And stirring up love before its own time, very, very dangerous and destructive thing to do. One of the things that concerns me sometimes is the interference with the beautiful period of latency. You know, latency is that period prior to puberty in a child, whereby he or she is totally disinterested in sexual matters, and rightly so. And it's not a prudish thing to protect that innocence. It's a very wonderful thing. They need that time of disinterest, you know. Yeah. And I think there's a very great judgment to be enacted by God upon people who disturb the latency of the young. They corrupt them, you know, they confuse them. Yes. But you find sometimes even parents doing that, you know, dressing their little girls provocatively. Right. Terrible, terrible. Anyway. Yeah. But the Song of Songs, in addition to the passage I cited there, some might be amused at this. There's no penalty for being amused, but truth and humor often go together. This bride, this young woman in the poem, she also has brothers, and she quotes her brothers, and she quotes her brothers as saying the following: our sister is little, and she has no breasts as yet. What shall we do for our sister when her courtship begins? If she is a wall, we will build upon it a silver parapet. If she is a door, we will reinforce it with a cedar plank. Does that need any commentary from me? Perhaps not. So if a girl is a door, what is needed is it should be reinforced with a plank so that it can't be opened too easily. But if she is a wall, build a silver parapet. What's a parapet? I think a parapet is sort of like a porch, an ornamental porch, I think, honor her. So basically what it is saying is honor the young woman who is dedicated to chastity, and get a little help for that young woman who is not. There we are.
That's right. That's an excellent example. Yeah, that's true. The Song of Songs, it's not very much talked about, because I guess I understand what you mean by it's an exotic text.
Yeah.
But it is very beautiful, and it's obviously the Word of God, and that passage is so important. Do not stir up love before its time. So I keep telling women especially, it is right, it is good for you to not give away your heart prematurely in the relationship. Don't give in to that, because the men respond to that. If they respond to that for the negative, they're not worth it. If they respond to that to the positive, they will step up and they will cherish you and honor you and respect you more.
Absolutely. I have a recollection, this goes way back to the early 1970s when I was a high school teacher, Allentown Central Catholic High School in Allentown, PA. I had juniors, and morality was one part of my curriculum. And I remember talking to these kids about, well, it has different terms, French kissing, open mouth kissing, that sort of thing. Rather delicate subject, but I mentioned it to them, and I said, that's a very, very provocative type of engagement between a man and a woman, and appropriate only for those who are married. And there was a boy, I can still picture him, I can say his name, but I won't say his name, who raised his hand and mocked me. He did it in a humorous way. I didn't take umbrage at it, but he said, "Oh, that's ridiculous, Father." And I held my ground. And then the bell rang. Thank God for the bell that rang. So the kids all piled out of the class. And there was one girl who stayed behind. I still remember her name. And she came up to me after the class and said, "Father, I'm glad you held your ground there. They were just trying to wear you down." So I look back at that as a precious moment in life.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Hey, just as a last thought, you get a lot from the society that says, don't repress your feelings. Just as a last note, I mean, is there anything really wrong with repression, or is the word suppression, and can this be a positive thing especially for Catholics?
Yeah, I remember being told years ago that, of course, I'm a celibate, as you know. Every Catholic priest, or every Catholic priest in the Latin Rite, is called the celibacy. And we were told in the seminary that we were not called upon to repress sexual feelings that came to us, because repression of the feelings would indicate a denial of them, but rather suppression, which is a recognition of them and then a submission of them to the overall purpose. Okay, so repression, no, don't repress, because that's denial. That's saying reality is not reality. But suppression is saying, yes, I do have a sexual feeling. I recognize that I do, but I will not act on it. Neither act on it exteriorly, nor, more subtly, nor will I act on it interiorly, if you follow my drift. But I will simply say, hello, sexual feeling. Thank you for stopping by, but I can't do any business with you today. And I wouldn't mind if you didn't come back for a while.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful.
And they suggested to us adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, engagement of one's heart with the Lord is the great antidote.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you very much. Please go to our website, www.roadtocana.com, and check out our resources and these other programs. This one and other programs are available. And please share this with your friends and family, those who are in need of these subject matters. There's a lot of work to do. And remember, while you're on this road, that God has a plan for you, and to keep Christ's peace with you always.
On the road.